it's interesting how many companies have been funded and built based on a feature or a function, not a product, not a solution. We're offering software that I wish I had had in my other company, and we like to move quickly.
Speed is important.
Speed to me is important.
Good morning, Jeff. Very nice to have you with us in East Oaks Business. It's a pleasure to have you on that episode. We're live from Atlanta, and I would say everybody's scared of the CFO. Why do you think this is the case?
Well, it's I think usually what they call the power of the purse, and the fact that most CFOs are generally the ones at the executive level of the business who are held accountable for the state of the financial affairs of the company. Within private equity, I think that is accentuated by the fact that there's more expected discipline, control, and checks in place to help understand, report on, and manage the business than what I saw when I was in a public company CFO, or that I am aware of in some other private family-oriented businesses. The private equity aspect adds a lot of best practices, professionalism, and experiences that are very tailored to the sector, and in our case, software and technology, that I think benefit us greatly and allow us to ultimately support profitable growth. We want money to be there to invest where we think the growth in the business is. And to do that, we actually have to earn it to invest it.
True. Coming back from a long history and career and background, very experienced as a CFO, why did you choose Jaggaer?
It was pretty easy, actually. In my very first role, I had a client as an investment banker who offered me the CFO position. I originally have, from the start of my career, an accounting background. I was an auditor, got my CPA, as we call it here in the United States. And the first role was more a matter of them finding me, and it was my first job, and so I said yes as the opportunity presented itself. And it was a middle market business. It was about 200 million of revenue, making the transition from perpetual license to SaaS, which was very difficult. This was in 2012. Then I moved on to a much bigger company, over 3 billion of revenue. Then I tried a public company, and then I got back to private equity. And what I found over the 5-ish roles prior to Jaggaer that I've had there are 3 or 4 key success criteria. For me, I wanted big enough to be dynamic, challenging, global, and interesting to make the day rewarding. But not so big that you feel like you're just a cog in the wheel.
Okay.
I like to say at the bigger company where I worked, I felt like I was helping drive an aircraft carrier. And you would say, turn right. And 2 days later, it would turn.
Exactly.
Whereas in a middle market business, one like Jaggaer size, I view it as a bit more of a speedboat. We can turn it immediately.
Immediate impact.
Exactly right.
Okay.
That's number one. Number two, for me, was the industry. I've done many different sectors: human capital management, ERP, facilities and asset management software. I've also done retail point of sale software. What I liked about procurement was really twofold. Number one, it is a sector where clients need the software, whether the broader macroeconomic environment is positive, going well, or negative. If it's a negative, declining, recessionary environment, people need our software to help control costs, take costs out of the business. If it's an expansionary, growth-oriented environment, people need our software to help manage and ensure the right products and the right services are there at the right time to grow the business. And then as it relates to the industry, it's something that of the many hats I wear as a CFO, I really like it.
You like what you're doing?
We're offering software that I wish I had had in my other companies in the past, because as a CFO, as I said earlier, in a private equity-backed business, it is a critical piece to getting control of the business and understanding the business, which is understanding as much as you can about the cost base and projecting that to support the growth over the long term. The third item I would say for us was really the people and the executive team that we've put in place over the last 5 years. Some of the best I've worked with and have really enjoyed it. And that isn't just at the what we call the executive level, the C level. It's that next level down.
The full asset.
That's exactly right. I think we have great leaders in all of the key pieces of our business, and where we don't, we make the decisions quickly, really to try to ensure that we have as much longevity with our key leaders in their roles to shape those businesses, grow the culture of the various functions and the regions throughout the world, which is so important, I think, to a successful global business.
So back to the point of when we are in a recession, you help. When we are in good terms, the customers still need us. Do you think, as a company, many companies benefit from the COVID, by the way, right? And you know that more than me. Do you think we are one of them?
Yes, I think so. I think what we have found is the definition of procurement, particularly that some of our competitors have used in the past, is very narrow. The ERP players view it very narrowly. Some of our competitors who only do indirect define it relatively narrowly. I think what many of the challenges that COVID threw at business leaders have done much to open people's eyes to how broad of a scope, an impact, and potentially a problem that spend and procurement and supplying the business can create if you aren't managing them, getting information flow on them, and understanding them. Many executives, I dare say, of many companies, even some of our clients, didn't care about procurement, didn't care about supply chain and risk management of that supply chain. They care now. It's much more of a hot topic, as we all know.
So I think
and it hasn't gone away, right?
Definitely.
It's like a big light was shown on it. And even since then, we've had, unfortunately, challenges, in geopolitical settings. So it has done nothing but stayed very relevant.
So I would say that we were lucky to be ready for that.
Right.
Correct. I would take the second point as well when you mentioned about the people and the main asset, which I think is very important for any organization. How do you see, as a CFO running a global organization, middle market size, I would say, as you mentioned, with different cultures? We're expanding from America to Europe to Middle East to APAC. How do you see your day managing all of these regions together as a CFO?
Simply put, it's by having a good team. I learned very young in my career, very early on. It was one of the lessons that I learned at work, which was a very, very international MBA program.
Yeah.
And we had classmates from all over the world, that you can't take your necessarily way of doing business, your communication as simple as that, all the way to more sophisticated value-added selling paradigms, and assume that those work everywhere, just because of where you develop them, whether that's in Europe or North America, wherever your headquarters or executive team might be. And so you have to strike a balance. And I think over the years I've learned that there are a series of best practices and structures that we can bring cross-functionally into many areas of the world. But we can't lose sight of the fact, while that may be back office, that may be behind the scenes, that in how we engage and interface with customers, that last mile, as we say, you have to be local. And you best do that through local people who know the cultures, have the connections, and the management of that is I think much less difficult than the expansion of that.
Absolutely.
And whether it's organically or through acquisitions, or through partners, getting into new markets, it can be very challenging. So when you are in a market, or you have gotten in a market using one of those tools, saying every market from that competitive dynamic has its own, it's not just cultural, but the competition, the language, the foreign currencies, the commercial law and contracts, all of it. Each, you have to respect that. And to do that, you really need scale in those pursuits. And if you lack that scale, I think that's where a lot of companies do themselves a disservice and think they can do it light or cheap or fast when you can't.
I agree on
to be.
that. As a CFO as well, what we face, right? I'm doing also sales for a very long time in a leadership role, on a very senior positions in very big companies. But when you come to this size of an organization, do you feel that people try to prevent a discussion with the CFO? They keep it on the last or the final stage, or they're very open to talk to you? Or what actually you prefer? Do you prefer they come to you early in the process that can help better, or you advise them to work alone and then they come for a problem only? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think the office of the CFO is, there are as many different ways to structure that, both from a formal administrative standpoint, which functions roll up into it, all the way over to how it interacts with the rest of the business, as there are days in the year. And much of it, like many senior roles, derive from the CFO's personality, I think, over time, and the imprint that they have on the business. And so I think that's why you see so many different ways. There isn't one good answer on how to engage a CFO or that senior level finance team in a discussion, whether you're internally working up for whatever reason, you have a budget ask, you have exceptional requests in a sales situation that you need support or input on, or external, when you're trying to understand the customer's decision-making process and what role the CFO plays in it. I have been amazed in my career how some companies will, that are much, much bigger than us, and are buying what I would consider to be a modestly sized product in terms of the cost, will spend a lot more time, a lot more effort, and a lot more energy on negotiating the last dollar or cent, the last term or condition of that contract. I personally, when it comes to procurement, buying new services and products and goods, will have, I defer and want to empower my team in terms of, I'll help them define the problem and the need, especially if it's more material or strategic, but then I'll defer to them to go out and identify and survey the buyers and the landscape and put together the key elements of the RFP. And I'd like them to come back having taken the broader list and narrowed it down.
Options, basically.
And what have they done to take that broader list down to a handful, and then we can review that together. They've already disqualified parties that were not relevant, and it allows us to be more efficient, but it allows me to still ask enough questions and get enough input on the decision. And we like to move quickly.
Speed is important.
Speed to me is important, and what you as an executive team are spending your time on. And I think it's relevant to spend time on the strategic aspects of, example, what our software can do for you as a prospective customer. And I get that part of it. But by the same token, if you're running a 9-month-long RFP, let's say it took you 3-6 months to figure out you needed a change.
Yeah.
You add a 9-month RFP, 6-month RFP onto that. You then add a 3 to 9 to 12 month, depending upon your size, rollout and deployment. You're 2+ years down the road.
That's true.
And that's too slow for me. The world moves too fast.
And too costly.
And too costly.
And this is very important.
Absolutely.
As a CFO as well, if I ask you, what's your aspiration with Jaggaer for the next couple of years, for example? What's your main aspirations?
Continue growth, both organic and inorganic. I think we're getting to a scale, we're getting to a level of organizational tenure of our senior executives, our senior managers, getting to a level of maturity where, and demonstration of organic growth, and by growth I mean both revenue and profitability. Responsible growth, as I call it. As well as inorganic.
Yeah.
And I do think that, particularly with the capital markets in the United States starting to expose the folly of a lot of small startup companies that were very narrowly focused on it's interesting how many companies have been funded and built based on a feature or a function, not a product, not a solution.
It's a small thing.
Many companies. And so I think it will be an increasingly attractive time where valuations relative to what we want to pay responsibly with our stakeholders' money and what targets would be interested in will be more in alignment. And the focus of most investors has been, as I said earlier, on responsible, profitable growth, if you will.
So coming back from 2023, which I think it was fantastic year for Jaggaer, it started slow, but it went in a very good way without mentioning numbers for sure. Do you think this can be repeated again in 2024?
I think a lot of the trends that we saw in the second half of the year were certainly driven by the benefit of more stability. Mm-hmm. And my education in high finance and my experience in banking for many years always taught me the fact that visibility up in terms of times of rapid economic expansion, some might even say bubbles and booms, where people are throwing money at things, is one type of visibility. It makes me a little nervous because I've now lived through multiple cycles and I know that it will come to an ugly end usually. Visibility that can be defined a bit by flat. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if it's up or down, it's flat.
It's still going on.
Visibility in the form of maybe consistency is the word I should use, is what I think is oftentimes required for many business leaders to make informed and confident decisions. It's the volatility that can really create challenges where oftentimes buyers of our software, even though they need our software, will pull back and they'll make a very short-term decision. I think what we saw in the second half of 2023 was a bit more stability, and some, in the sense that interest rates globally were just moving up everywhere to stave off inflation that we saw coming out of COVID. Mm-hmm. And that created volatility, that created uncertainty, that created FX variancy. You, on top of that, saw a growing focus on many of the facets of ESG in terms of the environmental piece, the corporate governance, and as well as hiring practices. And that, as if that wasn't challenging enough, again, as we talked about earlier, we saw some of the geopolitical challenges, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and I think in some ways I'm cautiously optimistic that business leaders have realized that what we might have thought historically as a once-in-a-lifetime shock to the system, I think many would call it a black swan event.
Correct.
Might happen once or twice in a year or my career. But it feels to me, in the 25 years I've been doing this, where I've seen a dozen black swan events.
True.
And so I think the smartest and most thoughtful executives of businesses are realizing that that's arguably now more of just an ordinary part of doing business. So
it's natural to happen.
Up, down, sideways.
Yeah.
You need to plan for the long term, but volatility is the rule of the day. Layer into that environmental, right? I mean, with all of the challenges we're now seeing with extremes of weather, what that does to the supply chain.
Big change.
Big change.
Yeah.
That is just yet something else we didn't have to think about much 5-10 years ago that is now a prominent part of us managing our businesses. So I do think, long-winded way of saying, I do think we have seen an element of stabilizing with that macroeconomic interest rate driven set of considerations that gives people much more confidence that rates, which trickle through all aspects of the economy, from the consumer to corporate, manufacturing, to services businesses, the cost of capital going up, which, by the way, is very relevant for a lot of our customers and how our software can help. I think now that feels like that's capped out and that it's likely to stay flat or come down from here for a period of time, supports a productive and I think a positive 2024 backdrop for business. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll see
amazing
continuation of the second half.
We heard optimistic, and that's what we.
That's right. It's amazing to hear that from a CFO.
Absolutely. Right? So that's what amazing for. Let's zoom on the sales part of the story, right? And we're all here for the sales kickoff of 2024. Usually, the salespeople, they say like, always there's a tension between the sales and finance, right? And for very good reasons, for sure. Sales want to get the deal done. Sometimes they don't think in some small, tiny details that can impact that. You're the police in that part, right?
Yes.
If I can call it this way. Do you see that healthy, or this is weird?
I think it actually, a lot of it goes back to the point I made earlier about the culture of the CFO team.
Okay.
And I've seen some very constructive and I've seen some destructive. I've learned a lot of lessons the hard way in my 5 companies. I joke with people here that just be glad you weren't at the company where I was a first-time CFO.
Exactly.
And I was very responsive to the board.
Yeah.
And the board themselves were giving me as instructions entering the business and building a lot of things to fix. And from their perspective, we had lower productivity of sales with poor quality bookings and a commission structure that was out of control. And none of them were aligned.
For sure.
And you can do that using multiple metrics that track your bookings productivity per rep, per region, relative to your go-to-market spend and what's the return on that. And I think that's a very important metric to understand as a CFO stepping into the business where you are. I think stepping into Jaggaer, I had 2 benefits. One is those metrics were not totally out of whack. They weren't broken, they weren't misaligned as I've seen in the past at times. But secondly, we had a business that was trending in the right direction. You know, we had a lot of positive elements in place, but we had a lot of connections across the globe from a bunch of M&A at that time that needed to be completed. And
so
as we
all these dots together.
That's exactly right. So that we can be coordinated. Oftentimes, what I then find as a critical role for finance and its engagement in sales, I tell when I step into a new company as the culture that I want to create, my global finance team, down to even someone handling taxes, which sales may say that doesn't relate to me.
We don't,
That we're here to enable sales. I don't ignore, and I constantly remind them of the fact that one of the elements that drives finance as a point of control is the fact that in any country, we have generally accepted accounting principles that we have to adhere to.
Yeah.
And as part of that, in managing the business, you not only have to report on the past and make sure you're complying with, in particular, revenue recognition rules, which is where the far majority of fraud takes place in larger, particularly public companies. That's the foundation. And from there, it surprised me in many big businesses that I've stepped into, they lack a consistent definition of new bookings, new sales activities. And if you can define that with structure and consistently apply it, it benefits both of us.
Clearly.
If you know, because you've got it written out, what qualifies as a booking and the flavors of that. I know, because it's written out, that we can have a discussion around a model and a target. And if there are exceptions to that, we can engage on that. But where I think many CFOs struggle is, in some cases, for lack of a better description, the occasional bad apple.
Yeah.
Where it only takes one, somebody who misbehaves and gets you or a team, quote unquote, in trouble because something has been done that was either illegal, unfair, against policy, and the auditors find it, or you find it, and it makes the whole team, it makes the whole company look bad. It's a tarnish. And I take those personally. But for me, the biggest challenge, but I think also success, is to try to ensure you put the structure in place to minimize those chances of malfeasance in place. But you do that in a way that's balanced. And you start with an assumption of good and positive intent from both sides.
Benefit of trust, basically.
That's exactly
so they can just make sure that people still have the room.
That's right.
To make it happen.
And I don't like to be viewed as, the saying, the Wizard of Oz, where I'm the wizard behind the curtain. And if you have to talk to Jeff, you've done something wrong or bad. If you have to talk to the CFO, I like it, as I said, because we're here ultimately for sales enablement. I like it to be viewed as more collaborative than that. I want to distribute power to my team, decision-making power. I can't do that the first day I arrive. They have to learn and see and experience how I and they will tackle different situations. But I also like to be viewed as approachable, and so we try to create a fair number of mechanics and tools for sales to get that feedback and to get it quickly and to get it concisely, to try to reduce friction, question marks, because all of that ultimately flows through and is visible by the customer.
100%.
And so ultimately,
delays the process, it delays the
that's
deal.
exactly right. I say we're all here for sales enablement, but we know at the end of the day, without our customers, there's no sales.
Nothing.
And so ultimately, we do engage cross-finance with the customers quite a bit. If you think of invoicing, managing accounts receivable, assisting on renewals and things of that sort. And so I think that, again, that customer-focused, sales-first mantra, customer-first mantra is critical for us.
You think we can reach, in Jaggaer, you can reach to the level that we can say that CFO is executive sponsoring sales?
That's an interesting way to look at it, Hany. I would say the closest I've
It's not a tricky question.
Yeah. I mean, there are many CFOs at various companies who move into a CEO role,
Exactly.
For many different reasons.
Absolutely.
And that would suggest that to make that transition as the CFO, you have to be pretty close to that. You have to be open to that. You can't make a move of that magnitude where I view CEOs as half their job is to spend time with customers and clients, and the other half is with internal stakeholders. If you're not already of that mindset as a CFO, I think it's very hard to ever make that move. I think the other critical, though, way for a CFO to say that they are a customer advocate, customer first, is really boils down to that relationship with the CRO, Chief Revenue Officer.
Correct.
And if you as a CFO can have a close partnership there,
Alliance.
I've had some that were very strained, and I've some that were very healthy. Here at Jaggaer, we have an excellent CRO with whom not just me, but my team view as a trusted partner and someone that we work very, very closely with, which I think is to the benefit of the global sales team.
So you think the harmony between CRO and CFO can create a very healthy environment?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's a good summary. So let's zoom in again to the SKO. We agreed that we're very big 2024 and you're very optimistic, which I never heard from CFO before.
I think I said optimistic. I don't know if I said very.
I would say very.
That's right.
I'm a sales guy.
That's your interpretation.
Yeah.
Correct.
So what's your message to the sales team in 2024, especially that people are celebrating now? They're coming from wins and victories and stuff like that. And sales, you close the deal, day zero again.
Yes, that's right.
So what's your message to them for the rest of the year? In January, what can you tell them?
One of the facets that I love, back to your very first question, one of your very first questions about why Jaggaer, why did I choose Jaggaer, about our product and where we fit in corporate decision-making, strategizing, and operations with our spend management tools and our intelligence tools, is that when I wake up in the morning, I'm one of the few people who still gets the paper copy of the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
And I love
paper.
Okay. I get it delivered every day.
Okay.
And I walk down the driveway with my coffee and I pick it up, and that 5-minute walk back up.
So you keep the tradition.
Oh yes.
Nothing changed on that part.
That's exactly right. Okay. I love the fact that when I pick up that paper, almost every day of the 10-odd articles that are called out on the front page, there's relevancy to what we do for our customers in probably half of them. It's not just what's the economy doing, it's not just what may be going on in a particular vertical that's growing or experiencing contraction, but the myriad of topics that fall under compliance of all sorts, the many other elements that fall under geopolitical considerations for extended supply chains. It's even the U.S. political situation, with the
a lot of dynamics
line up for 2024, and the impact of a bit more of what we see in the United States, which is different administrations staying in power for shorter periods of time and flipping harder while they're in office, changing rules and laws and behaviors as best as they can as a presidential administration, and tax, like in the US, the tax reforms, and then whipping them back creates an element of dynamism that we haven't seen, back to my Black Swan event. And that's what, as a salesperson, that energy energizes me in an infectious way that I would hope energizes them. Although I know none of them are old enough to even have had a newspaper in their hands.
I don't remember actually.
That's right.
But yeah.
They should still look at their version of an electronic newspaper every single day, because that is a starting point discussion for us and our customers and how we can be relevant to them, how we can constantly remind ourselves and them, whether it's our development engineering team, our product management team, who are constantly looking for ways for us to stay ahead of those changes.
Trendy.
Always. That to me is an energy that I really started to have coming out of COVID, that just hasn't abated, because the market and our products just have become that much more relevant, I think, to a broader swath of businesses, a broader swath of countries and geographies, and a broader swath of people within those businesses where we can help. So that's the energy I would encourage the sales team to take.
Without energy, there's no sales.
That's exactly.
That's 100% true.
That's exactly.
I mean,
what's the saying? As a salesperson, if you don't have passion about selling,
forget it.
Then your customer will not have passion about buying.
100%. I mean, I would say for me, as DNA is running by sales for myself, I think 50% of the sale is the energy you give to your customer as well.
It's very personal.
Because you will definitely personally take it, and then you can move forward. People buy from people.
That's right.
You can say that.
That's exactly it.
Well, Jeff, I mean, it's really interesting discussion. It's very good to know more about Jeff, the CFO, who people are just see him in a different way.
Of course.
We didn't go personal, but I'm sure we'll have another series of discussion. It will be very beneficial for Jaggaer community and definitely the other world of people as well, to understand what is the CFO of Jaggaer thinking. Thank you so much for this time, and really appreciate your very valuable advices. And the traditional way of thinking sometimes is very interesting to me as well. I think people can follow this part if it really gives them the right energy as well. And we aspire to be #1 this year. So with your help and your support, I think with all what you're thinking about, which I think it's very eye-opener for many people, we definitely achieve it. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Very, very nice discussion, and we'll talk soon again.
It's a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.